Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and today I wanted to talk about the Aegis Vanguard, the upcoming fighter, the two-seater that should be hitting probably about mid-March. This is going to be the concept sale. This is the fighter that a lot of people are talking about. It's basically the deep space two-seater. And I just wanted to discuss this fighter and why this thing is probably going to sell like hotcakes. I mean, this is probably going to be one of the biggest selling ships in the fighter class that they've ever put out. When this ship comes out, you are going to see more forum madness and more hype than you've probably seen for any other fighter. And a lot of it is actually going to be pretty well founded because if you look at the description of the fighter, the capabilities that are packaged into it are insane. Now, one of the first things a lot of people are worried about, oddly enough, is what is it going to look like? Well, chances are, it's going to be look like a sci-fi heavy fighter. It's probably going to be a cross between the Retaliator and the Gladius. It's going to be some kind of a midway point probably between those two ships. And it's probably not going to look like the World War II fighter that everyone jumped on when Ben said, well, it's going to be like an BF 110. I think he was talking more about capabilities, and I mean, if you look at the capabilities description, long range, extra fuel tanks, deep space scanning, two-seater with a gunner, that sort of stuff. And I think that's what he was trying to kind of key into, and not the fact that it's going to look like a Messerschmitt 110. So as far as the ship actually looking like a BF 110, I really don't see it. It's going to be something different, and it's going to be something that definitely fits into the Aegis line, but it's not going to be a World War II fighter with sci-fi engines strapped onto it. And truth be told, even if it was, would it really be the end of the world? No, it wouldn't, because what we're really talking about here is not how the ship looks. It's how it flies and what it can do. And so let's discuss that. Now, first of all, the big thing that sticks out is it's a two-seater. So automatically you've got the same thing that you would have in the Super Hornet. You've got a directable turret, but chances are in this version the guy will actually be sitting in the turret instead of just directing it from just behind the pilot. And the turret operator will also be able to operate the missiles. So now your gunner can also fire missiles at the guys behind you and not just his guns. Then add to the fact that this guy can also keep your tail clear, keep his eyes out in areas where the pilot isn't looking. Say, oh, you're getting too close to this asteroid, watch out. Oh, you're hovering too close to the space station, look out. Or there's someone coming at us from above or behind, watch yourself. Now you have that added peace of mind. Now it's two people working together, and that is pretty awesome. The next thing we're getting is an advanced scanning array. So now we've pretty much packaged both the Hornet Tracker and the Super Hornet into one ship. So what you can do is you can actually travel with the extended range of this ship further out up to a star system away and start hunting down targets, either by yourself or as the leader of a group. And that's really what this ship is. This ship isn't just an individual ship. This ship is probably going to end up being the quintessential flight leader ship, because you now have the capabilities of the Super Hornet and the Hornet Tracker packaged into one ship. So now you can actually lead an element of fighters. So you can be the guy who can direct his wingmen onto targets, or your radar intercept officer can. He can sit there and say, we have 3 enemies at 240, 35 degrees down. Go get them, intercept them. Once they go and chase these guys down, you can either choose to maintain distance and keep your eyes open, or you can follow them in and you can just add extra firepower. You may not be as maneuverable as they are, but you can actually sweep in once the target is occupied with your guys and destroy them. Or, you can go out with other heavy fighters as well. When you have that kind of resilience, and that kind of firepower packed into your ship, you can probably punch a little bit above your weight and in groups take on enemies that otherwise wouldn't be available to fighters. But now you can reach those with a much longer range fighter. And also, you don't have to be crowded in with everybody else. I mean, everybody's going to be sitting in the same system. There are going to be so many people out there with so many limited range ships, with so many short range ships, especially in the fighter class, whereas you can range out further, farther, deeper. You can spot things further away. So even if you just want to play by yourself, you'll be able to cover a lot more ground a lot faster in areas where you don't have to worry about competition as much, because you're going to be further and farther out because you have the jump drive, you have the range, you can go wherever you want to go. Whereas everybody else might be trapped within the system or a nearby system, you can go further and further out. You're no longer pinned down. You can spend, you can go out and fly for ages all by yourself and hunt targets all by yourself without running into somebody else possibly, with only having to worry about the NPCs out there because you can go where the other guys can't. So you're really going to be in this great position where you have the range to get beyond most of the other fighters that are going to be playing the game. You can go to the areas where they can't get. And the bigger ships that can get to those areas, you can outrun them. So you're never really in a situation where you're really going to lose, because you'll have the deep space scanning equipment, so no one's really going to be able to sneak up on you unless they're in a ghost. And if they're in a ghost, how are they even going to have the range to be where you're at? You can go further out, and the big ships aren't going to be able to hide from your scanners, so it's going to be really hard for people to sneak up on you. I mean, if you use like an example of, say, let's say NPCing is the same as, say, EVE Online or something like that, where you're jumping from belt to belt to belt. You're going to be going to places where other people can't go, and you're going to be able to see ahead with your scanners to know, is this belt good, is the next belt good. You'll be able to find enemies, and enemies that are harder to get to for other fighter class ships. You're going to have much more capability in that area. So if you're out in the furthest reaches that are at least as far out as you can get, hunting down NPCs for bounties or whatnot, you're going to be able to do the missions that the other guys can't, or the other guys can't without having to take a whole bunch of equipment off their ships and reduce their combat capability just to be able to get there. Now, another thing that people have talked about, and it's actually been misappropriated, and you see it in a lot of threads, is people have kind of fixated on the fact that this is a planet-based ship. That, oh, it's no, it's based, it's only staged from planets. You can't take it to a station, or you can't fly it off a carrier. That was never stated. In fact, if you go back into the funding and you scroll down to $60 million, November 1st, 2014, when this ship was basically, when it passed its funding goal and it went into production, they basically said, right, it's like the third line in, Bulldogs, back when this was still called the Bulldog, are usually flown by ground and station-based naval forces. Usually flown by ground and station-based forces. It doesn't expressly say they can only be launched from a planet, and it doesn't expressly say that they can only be launched from a station. It just means that they are usually flown from those locations, because it's going to be a bigger than average fighter. It doesn't mean you'll never be able to get it onto a carrier. It doesn't mean that certain things, are automatically off the table. It just means not always. It's not the norm for them to be doing these things. It doesn't mean that you can never do them. So overall, in the end, I mean, am I trying to convince other people to part with their money? No, I'm not. I mean, this is my thought process. This is how I evaluate a ship's concept and how I evaluate things, and this is what I look for. And these are a lot of the points that, I mean, this ship really, this is how this ship really sells itself to me. I mean, I look at things like long range, its weapons loadout, the possibility of being a two-seater, extra scanning equipment, and that keys into the style of gameplay that I would like, to be able to go out further and farther than everybody else and to explore and to hunt down targets into NPC in areas that other people can't necessarily get to, or can't necessarily get to very easily, if at all. So, I mean, the ability to kind of go out to those hard to reach areas with a fighter versus, having to take a much larger and therefore a much more visible and easier to track target. Yeah, I'm definitely, this is something that I am very interested in, and possibly even, depending on how the capabilities work out and how it plays out in game, it could end up supplanting any other fighter I own and becoming, my mainstay. Just because it has so many capabilities, and really I haven't seen a glaring flaw yet. Now, of course, at this point, all we have is a text description. We'll know more once, once we get to about probably the middle of March, when we actually see some concept art and, some more dressed up and more in-depth description of this ship. But right now, I mean, it looks really, really good. And the fact that it seems to be on the same high-speed pipeline that the Gladius was on. I mean, if you think about the Gladius was only hit its funding goal in April. It was concept sold in July, and we're going to be flying it this month. Unless something drastic happens, we're going to be flying it this March. And now here we are, and that's less than a year. And now we're already on the concept sale of the Vanguard coming up, and it only passed funding in November. I mean, we could be seeing this thing by September. Who knows? So we could be flying it by September. We could have it in our hangar by June. Who knows? So, yeah, I am right in there. And I'm not saying you should spend your money, but I'm going to be spending mine.